2021. It is 9 a.m. Before we begin, please be advised the meeting is being recorded. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
This call is being recorded.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Director Cochran.
Here.
Present. Director Fredericks. Absent. Director Garbarino.
Here.
Present. Director Rabbit.
Here.
Present. Chair Terrio.
Here.
Present. And President Parr.
Present.
Present. You have a quorum. You are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. You are at 9. So you are not a committee of the whole. You also have on the line directors Grosboll, Hill, Maston, and Snyder.
So unless we achieve a committee of the whole in the course of the meeting, what I would like to do is open the discussions in the meeting to those directors who are not part of the committee with voice but no vote.
Okay.
So feel free to participate in discussions if you have something to say.
Great, thank you. I will confirm that part too on my side, that we will recognize them for discussion but no vote. I'm going to also confirm that Dennis Mulligan is on the phone.
Yes, present.
Joe Wire.
Yes.
Ava Bauer-Furbish.
Present.
Kim Manolius. I'm sorry, Madeline Chun is going to be with us here today.
Madeline.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you. Steve Miller.
Present. Good morning.
Mona Babasa.
Present.
Thank you. Jim Swindler, are you here on the line? He is not. Kelly Hopper.
Present.
Thank you. That confirms staff on the line. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The official announcement here, I would like to remind everyone to mute their phones until after staff's presentation, and remember to unmute when we open up for director's discussion. After staff's presentation, I will ask for any comments and or questions on the item. If there are questions, the Secretary or I will call on you accordingly. After our discussion, we will ask for any public comment before taking a roll call vote. Each page of the meeting packet is numbered on the bottom right-hand corner for ease of following along. We'll start with item number 3, to authorize approval of contract change order number 31 to contract number 2016B01, Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent System and Wind Retrofit Project. The staff report begins on page 3, and Chief Engineer Ava Bauer-Furbish is on the line to present the report. Ms. Bauer-Furbish, plow ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report under agenda item 3 presents staff recommendation for approval of contract change order number 31 to contract 2016B01, Golden Gate Bridge Suicide Deterrent System and Wind Retrofit Project. The CCO in the amount of $1,132,331. And this is for modifications to the suspension bridge suicide deterrent system and net panel configuration, and with the understanding that sufficient funds are available in the contract 2016B01 construction contingency to finance this contract change order. So as a background, excuse me, the suicide deterrent portion of this construction contract involves construction of a tensioned horizontal stainless steel wire mesh net suspended on stainless steel border cables. These cables will be connected to and supported by cantilever steel brackets along the west and east sides of the bridge. The net and support brackets will be located approximately 20 feet below the sidewalk and will extend about 20 feet out. The support brackets at the net panels they support that are adjacent to the concrete pile on S1 and N1 and the south and north sides of the main towers are called end net panels because they are different from the typical brackets and net panels at the remaining locations along the bridge. The end net panels are built of heavier steel support brackets that are bolted to and braced against the stiffening truss bottom cord so they are strong enough to resist the loads imparted onto them from the tension net and border cables, and they are able to transfer these loads into the stiffening truss. Engineering staff and the design consultant for the Golden Gate Bridge Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit reviewed the details of these end net panels and determined that if they not modified, the net would obstruct access for the installation of energy dissipation devices inside the suspension bridge truss next to pylons S1 and 1 and the Marin and main towers. As part, this installation will be done as part of the upcoming Phase 3D seismic retrofit project. So to maneuver the placement of the 26-foot-long energy dissipation devices, an approximately 100-foot-long portion of the net would have to be removed at the 12 interface locations to provide sufficient clearance for rigging of these devices. The original design of the net system did not allow for such partial removal of the net at the end panels, because if an end panel portion of the net was removed, the remaining portion of the net would not maintain the required tension and geometry and would not properly function. It was concluded that the end net panels had to be reconfigured by installing an independently functioning net panel in each of the 12 interface 100-foot interface location areas, and by moving the end net panels 100 feet away from their original location. The suicide deterrent system design consultant developed revised drawings detailing these modifications for inclusion in contract change order number 31. Staff requested a cost and time proposal for this contract change order from the contractor. The contractor submitted a cost proposal in the amount of $2,261,206 and has reserved its rights to unspecified contract time extension and unspecified costs associated with the time extension. The contractor has not provided any justification for contract time extension and the associated costs. In parallel, engineering staff and its cost consultant have developed a cost estimate for contract change order 31 and have determined that the revision to the work resulted in a cost increase of $1,132,331. Also, staff and its schedule consultant have analyzed whether this contract change order will impact the final completion of the work under the contract and have determined that the change did not warrant a contract time extension. The reason for the contractor's cost proposal to be 2 times of the district's cost estimate is that it is based on contractor crediting the cost of work that was modified by contract change order 31 using the original bid pricing and then replacing that cost by pricing the work covered by the contract change order using much higher pricing. The proposal also includes costs for additional lane closures, additional access platforms, material storage and handling, engineering, management, consulting, and overhead that were excessive and not proportionate to the change. In contrast, the district cost estimate is based on pricing the actual changes to the net system at each location based on the bid prices, original bid prices, and then applying cost adjustments for labor, equipment, additional management, and engineering equitable with the increased scope and with contract allowed overhead and profit rate. Engineering staff and its cost consultant reviewed the contractor's proposal and determined it to be unfair and not equitable with the contract change order scope of work and not compliant with the contract requirements for development of cost proposals for changes to the work under the contract. For example, markups for indirect costs and profits. Staff and the contractor could not agree on the price and the determination of the no extension of contract time. The contract states, this construction contract states that in the event that the parties cannot reach agreement concerning the compensation terms for the changed work, the district will make payment in such an amount as the engineer may determine to be fair and equitable. In such event, an approved contract change order will be issued to reflect the amount to be paid by the district. Based on this, as provided for in the contract, staff recommends that approved contract change order 31 will be issued in the amount of $1,132,331 for the labor, equipment, material costs associated with the change and with no time extension. Staff has discussed this change with the Federal Highway Administration and Caltrans and has received their concurrence with this change order. Sufficient funds are available in the construction contract contingency to finance the price of this contract change order. And with this, I'll be happy to answer any question the committee may have for me.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer-Furbush. Do any of the directors have questions for Ms. Bauer-Furbush?
This is Dick Groswell. Is this a time for me or am I later?
You can jump in anytime you want. That's what we opened up for.
Okay. Ava, is the person that whoever you or your staff are dealing with Shimmick the same person that we've been dealing with, or with the ownership change, is you dealing with anybody different? I'm just curious.
No, this is still the same group. After the last transaction in January, we learned that basically the top management of Shimmick would not be changed. They simply move over to the company to keep these positions, and also the staff personnel that we're dealing with is still the same.
And just playing devil's advocate, this is a change. It's not an insignificant change. When I see a change order and it's over $1 million, that's a lot to me. What's their best argument for why they should need additional time? Why is that rejected? It seems like it is different. Why wouldn't that require them a little more time? I'm just curious.
So there are different operations under this construction contract. And there are operations, we call them to be on a critical path because they control the final completion of the contract. And what we have determined, evaluating contractor schedule, and considering that the contractor didn't bother to explain why they demand reserve right for more time, we have determined that even this is added work, it does not impact any of the operations that lead to the completion of the job.
Okay.
And also the difficulty we're having is that the contractor is modifying their schedule every so often. So the so-called critical path changes. So this basically puts the determination of the entitlement to the additional time in very difficult position on the part of the contractor.
And I see that their price is almost 50% higher than our number. Did they provide any written documentation in support of that, and is this just going to be another one for the new people on this board? This is just another disagreement with the contractor that's going to have to be dealt with later, I guess, huh?
It appears to be this way. What they provided as a support for the cost estimate, we find absolutely unreasonable pile-up of additional markups over markups and prices that do not comply with the rules of the contract. Like I mentioned, deleting portions of the work that it's the area affected by the contract change order, but does not change the work itself. The contractor deleted this work by original bid prices, which are much lower than the prices then they use to reprice the same work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other directors who have questions for Ms. Bauer-Frobush on this item?
Yeah, through the chair.
Mr. Chair, this is
I think I heard Director Rabbit first and then Director Hernandez. Go ahead, please, Director Rabbit.
Yeah, no, sorry, I apologize. Thank you. Just to follow up on Director Grosboll's question, I'm just curious about the consequences of this in terms of getting the work done. I take it that the contract has the provision to allow the engineer's estimate to move forward, but does it also, I assume it also has the provision to have that work done in a timely manner? I mean, I'm just, what's to keep the contractor holding out and for more money?
That's correct. The rules of this contract require the contractor to proceed with the work as fast as they can, and they have rights to protest the issue CCO in terms of its price and time adjustment. But they have to proceed with the work in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Director Hernandez. Are you there? I'm not hearing you.
just disconnected. Yeah, I just saw her. Oh, there she is. She's back again. Director Hernandez?
Sorry, is everyone hearing me now?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I instead of unmuting myself, I disconnected myself. So,
Okay.
yes, thank you. And thank you for the report. And I appreciate my colleagues' comments earlier. They were along the lines of what I intended to ask. My question was mostly responded to in the last response to my colleague, Director Rabbit. But can I ask you, our Chief Engineering Officer, what you anticipate to happen from this period forward? I have concerns about the work getting done, and as my other colleague, Director Grosboll, pointed out, this seems like a sort of a cut and dry situation in which we have one opinion, the contractor has another. There's some language that protects us, but in actuality, how does this pan out? Thank you.
So in terms of this particular work covered by the change order 31, the contractor has to proceed with this work, and they are working on this piece of the project right now. We are expecting that this is become the formal dispute. We have received a letter of telling us that they are challenging our decision. In terms of the work that it's ongoing, we do believe that there are other parts of the project that really lead the completion date and control the completion date. And I'm not clear, Director Hernandez, would you like to have an information of the current status of the overall schedule for the project?
No, I don't think that level of depth is necessary. I'm just, I'm concerned, as I said, that this seems kind of cut and dry. We're alleging one thing, they're alleging another thing, and we have some language that protects us to a degree, but I just, I don't remember having to deal with this issue in the past, a change order under these circumstances. And if this is just another situation in which we sort of have to chalk up an additional legal fight, then I suppose that's what it is. But the way but the way it's presented doesn't indicate or doesn't go into the level of detail of how complicated it's going to be or the impacts to our schedule. And I guess I just want, for the record, a clear understanding that yes, this is likely going to be more problematic and has the potential to put us even off schedule farther than we are now. Am I understanding that that's likely to happen, that we are going to be kicked off schedule to a greater degree than we are?
No, this is, as I mentioned, we have reviewed the progress of work and the impact this change has on the overall project schedule. And this does not control the project schedule, does not cause the project to be further delayed, just by the fact that we need to make this change order. Another aspect of this situation is that the burden of proof of prices being reasonable is on the contractor. And what we saw is basically at pricing at the level that it's absolutely unfair. And considering that this involves not only district money, but also state and federal money, there are rules under the contract. The district itself wouldn't want to spend money that wouldn't want to pay money that are not reasonable to pay, but also our funding partners have the same approach to construction. So once again, if the contractor is able to prove to us that they are entitled to more money than we determine this contract change order is worth, then we are always open to review the information and discuss the issue with them and reach the conclusion whether they're right or not. So this is their avenue for challenging the contract change order.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dennis. May I offer an insight?
Yes, please.
May I make one continued comment before I lose it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So thank you again to our Chief Engineering Officer. I suppose my questions come from a place that involves my background in construction and watching construction contracts, and in addition to public works and private work contracts, where contractors have a lot of power when it comes to a change order, particularly if it's something that the awarding body has made an error on. Not that I'm assuming that an error was made on our part, but just what I've seen in terms of how change orders move, it's usually a great consequence to the awarding body, both financially and time-wise. So that's what informs my basis for my questions today. And thank you very much.
General Manager Mulligan, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to offer two insights. One, with respect to the scale of this change. The construction contract value is $142 million. So while $1.1 million is a large sum of money, it represents less than 1% of the work involved. So the scale of it is such that it won't have any significant or cardinal change on the contract. But more importantly, to the line of questioning from Directors Hernandez and Tirio, is that this issue that's before us, where we have a dispute on what the actual pricing for a change order is, has arisen on countless contracts with the district previously, including with the same contractor on Phase 2 and Phase 3A. And in all of those prior instances, when we've had an argument on the price, the contractor and the district have set that argument aside, and the contractor has executed the change order work with Godspeed. They've done the work as quickly as they can with all the other constraints they have and challenges they may have with their own organizational structure. But in all prior instances with this contractor, when we had a dispute on pricing, they performed the work, and then we resolved the dispute on pricing and time extension later after the work was completed. And so we fully expect that that will happen again. Ava's team will spend time with lawyers, arguing with the contractor on the money, but that argument on money will not delay the execution of this changed work. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. I actually have a question for Ava that I hope might clarify the scope of this thing. And that is, as I'm understanding it, Ava, this is the addition of diagonal braces to 2 or 4 struts that do not now have them, and the reconfiguration of the net so that 4 panels are individually installed rather than part of the bridge-long net, which it seems to me would actually make them easier to install. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
This is absolutely correct. So, for example, the end panel that's supposed to be next to the tower is now shifted 100 feet to the side. And in that 100-foot depth, we're going to put an independent panel with braces, special braces, so it can be independently operated, so we can remove this portion of the net independent from the rest of the net run.
Yeah. So even though it's pricey, it's not a huge change. All right. Any other directors with questions for Ms. Bauer-Furbush? Okay. Then before we go on to a vote, is anyone from the public there who wishes to speak on the item?
Thank you. We've already polled our line, and there are no speakers on this item.
Then, Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a vote? Oh, actually,
we need a
motion.
I'll move that we approve. I'll move that we approve the item.
Okay. And a second? And a second. Madam Secretary, now please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. I'm looking at my list of callers, and we are actually now a committee of the whole with Director Hernandez and Director Snyder now joining us. So I'm going to start with, let's see, on our first by Director Cochran and the second by Director Rabbit, starting with Director Arnold. Absent. Director Frederick. Absent. Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Aye. Director Grosboll.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Hill.
Aye.
Director Maston.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rabbit, aye. Director Rodoni. Absent. Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie. Absent. Second Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
First Vice President Terrio.
Yes.
And President Parr.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving to item number 4, and in the same field of consideration, the suicide deterrent system. It's to approve actions relative to professional services agreement number 2018-B075, Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent Net System Fabrication Shop Inspection Services with David Engineering, LLC. The staff report begins on page 7, and Ms. Bauer-Furbush will also present this report. Ms. Bauer-Furbush, it's yours again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The agenda item number 4 is relative to the administration of the Golden Gate Bridge Suicide Deterrent and Wind Retrofit Construction Contract by the district. This report presents staff recommendation for execution of the third amendment to the Professional Services Agreement 2018-D75 with David Engineering of Chicago, Illinois, in an amount not to exceed $163,000 for continuation of the Suicide Deterrent Net System Fabrication Inspection Services through December 2021. Establishment of a 10% contingency for the amendment in the amount of $16,000 and an increase in the amount of $179,000 in the fiscal year 2020-21 Bridge Division capital budget for the Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent System project number 1526, to be funded from district reserves for a revised total project 1526 budget of $196,432,000 $196,868. Excuse me, I will repeat the number, $196,432,868. The suicide deterrent system portion of the construction contract, this construction contract, involves fabrication and installation of a horizontal stainless steel wire mesh net that will be supported by cantilever steel brackets along the west and east sides of the bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent System project is funded partially with monies from the federal government, and for this reason, the district follows the rules and procedures applicable to federally assisted projects. Consistent with these procedures, the district has developed construction administration plan, which states that administration and management of this construction contract by the district required, among other services, engagement of a consultant for the net system quality assurance fabrication shop inspections, which take place at the fabricator's facility near Chicago. By Resolution 2018-59, the Board of Directors authorized an award of Professional Services Agreement 2016-D75, Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent Net System Fabrication Shop Inspection Services to David Engineering, LLC, in the amount of $400,000 and approved a contingency for this PSA in the amount of $40,000. The scope of services consists in general of performing quality assurance inspections to monitor the net system fabrication for conformance with the approved net system fabrication quality control plan, and an oversight overseeing implementation of quality control by the fabricator, which the fabricator is responsible for. The original PSA price was based on an estimated 24 months of fabrication time. As previously reported to the committee, the contractor has not progressed the work as required by the contract, which results in delays to various construction operations. Due to the contractor's delays in performing field verifications and development of net system fabrication drawings, in early 2020, staff determined that the fabrication would not be completed within the originally estimated 24-month fabrication period. And in May 2020, the first amendment to the PSA with David Engineering was issued to extend the quality assurance inspection period from June 2020 to January 31st, 2021. Then in late 2020, around December, it became evident based on the remaining scope of fabrication and recorded production rates that the fabrications will not be completed until the end of this year. Staff discussed the remaining scope of fabrication work with the contractor and fabricator, and they concurred with this estimate. Using the authorized PSA contingency of $40,000 in January this year, the second amendment to the PSA was issued under an authority granted by the board to the general manager. This amendment extended the performance period under the PSA to the end of April this year and increased the PSA amount by $38,530. So to continue quality assurance inspections of the remaining suicide deterrent net system fabrication through December 2021, the third amendment to PSA with David Engineering is necessary. David Engineering has provided a cross proposal in the amount of $163,000 to continue performing their services through December 2021. Engineering has reviewed the proposed cost and found it to be reasonable in terms of the consultant budgeted labor hours to perform the additional scope of services requested by the district. And Their pricing is consistent with David Engineering audited labor and overhead billing rates. Staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the execution of the third amendment to TSA with David Engineering in a not to exceed amount of $163,000 as presented in the staff report. Staff also recommends that the contingency for this amendment in the amount of $16,000 be established for any additional scope of services that may develop while work progresses. I also would like to mention that the proposed cost increase of $179,000 is part of the total estimated cost of additional related to the extension of construction contract administration and construction engineering efforts by engineering staff and various consultants. This is necessitated by the delay to the project completion. As reported to the committee in August 2020, the district is working with its funding partners to secure additional funds for the project. In the interim, to continue funding these net system quality assurance fabrication shop inspection services, staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve a $179,000 increase in the budget of the project 1526 to be funded with the district reserves. And with this, I'll be happy to answer any questions the committee may have for me.
Thank you again, Ms. Bauer-Bush. Do any of the directors have questions for Ms. Bauer-Bush? Hearing none. Madam
Mr. Chairman,
oh,
I do have a question.
Sorry, go ahead, Director Cochran.
Ava, as I'm reading your background information, we've gone through all of this. We increase our adjustments, but then in your last paragraph of the background, it says we're still going to be short $19.5 million. Could you, why is that?
So in August last year, I presented a recommendation for $2 million increase in staff costs for the construction engineering and management of this construction contract, and this was a part of the quite comprehensive estimate of additional costs that we need to expect the district may incur as a result of the delay and the need to extend the construction contract administration and engineering efforts. So in August, we estimated that all the pieces of this cost increase total $23,188,717. And we also reported that as we reached the point on different consulting services and also with staff costs that additional money is needed, we will be bringing these pieces for the committee recommendation to the board. Now, as you can see in the background in the report, we have already brought before you the $2 million increases in district staff out. This is all portions of this $23 million estimated. So to date, we have presented increase in $2 million to the district staff cost and about $1.5 million for the additional temporary structures engineering advisor support services. So this is the third piece of this $23 million, and there are remaining services. For example, there is a need to increase the budget for the consultant that helps us with the site inspections on the bridge, and there will be need to increase the budget for the cost schedule reviews, and also claim support. So all of this is included within this estimated 23 million. I hope this lengthy explanation explains the what the director asked.
In addition to that, will Caltrans and MPC participate in these costs also?
This is Dennis. If it's the chair's pleasure, I can speak to that question with some good news.
All right, please.
So when the Chief Engineering Officer, Ms. Ava Bauer-Furbush, highlighted the cost associated with the delay, the $23 million, last August, she told the committee that we would take items incrementally up to that $23 million, and I was tasked with going out and seeking money. I'm pleased to report that on Wednesday, yesterday, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission met and they approved $7.9 million of funding for the 1/3 share. I was successful in convincing the first of our two partners that we should replicate what we did previously with a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 share. Now that I have that piece behind us, I will be reaching out to our next partner, the state, to see if I can replicate success there. But MTC did vote yesterday unanimously on $7.91 million of new federal money for this $23 million increase.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that.
Do any of the other directors have questions for Ms. Bauer-Furbush? All right, then that would be the end of discussion. Is there anyone from the public, Madam Secretary, who wants to speak on this?
We have no members of the public speaking on this item.
Then can we have a motion on the item?
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
Got it.
I have Director Cochran on the motion. In the second?
Patty?
That was Director Garbarino.
Garbarino on the second. Okay. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. We are voting on item number 4 of B&O, and I will start with Director Arnold. Absent Director Frederick. Absent Director Garbarino.
Yes.
Yes. Director Grosboll.
Yes.
Yes. Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Aye. Director Hill.
Yes.
Director Maston.
Yes.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni. Absent Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Stephanie. Absent Second Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
First Vice President Terrio.
Yes.
Yes. And President Parr.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item 5 on the agenda is to approve actions relative to the award of professional services agreement number 2020 B053, Bridge Inspection Services to HDR Engineering Incorporated. Staff report starts on page 15. And Ms. Bauer-Furbush, you're on one more time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the subject of this staff report is different. This staff report concerns bridge inspections of our bridge. So Title 23 Highways of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 650, Subpart C, National Bridge Inspection Standards, sets the national standards for inspection and evaluation of all highway bridges. The Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District is required to comply with the bridge inspection requirements set forth in those regulations in order to receive federal funding for bridge projects. This report presents staff recommendation for an award of professional services agreement number 2020 B53, Bridge Inspection Services, to HDR Engineering of Walnut Creek, California, in an amount not to exceed $9,063,000 to perform 2 cycles of the 23 CFR 650 mandated bridge inspections of the Golden Gate Bridge. An establishment of 10% contingency for this PSA in the amount of $906,300, with the understanding that sufficient funds are available in the fiscal year 2020-21 Bridge Division operating budget to finance the estimated $1.2 million expenses during this fiscal year for PSA 2020-D53. In accordance with the federal regulations, bridge owners are required to perform inspections of all bridge structural members every 2 years, except for the underwater portions of the bridges that must be inspected every 5 years. There are 4 types of bridge inspections applicable to the existing bridges. Fracture critical member inspections, special close-up in-depth bridge inspections, routine bridge inspections, and complex bridge element inspections. And I will do my best to explain what all these 4 really mean. So a fracture critical member of a bridge is defined as a steel member in tension or with a tension element whose failure would probably cause a portion or the entire bridge to collapse. So by definition, these are very important elements of every bridge. The fracture critical member inspection of all bridge fracture critical members must be performed every 2 years at a distance of no more than an arm's length distance from the member to be inspected. So the inspector must be able to touch the inspected member. A total of 614 Golden Gate Bridge members have been designated as fracture critical, which include the suspension bridge floor beams and the entire length of the 2 main cables, the south and north approach viaduct girders, floor beams, truss cords, and truss diagonals, and the 4-point arch floor beams. Golden Gate Bridge members that are subject every 2 years to the complex bridge element inspections, main cable bands, rocker links, and special devices such as the energy dissipation devices that are currently in place on the 4-point arch, and also on the 4-point arch force impact resisting devices. These inspections must be performed from such a distance that allows a visual assessment of their conditions. So it is allowed that can be performed with the use of binoculars. Other bridge members that are not in the categories of fracture critical or complex elements are subject every 2 years to the routine bridge inspections that must be performed from such a distance that allows a visual assessment of their conditions. So once again, this can be done with binoculars. Except for these members that every so often determination is made that they have to be subjected to an in-depth special close-up inspections and an arm's length distance to provide more detailed assessment of their conditions and any required repairs. 23 CFR 650 also requires that a load rating analysis using the latest standards be performed to determine the safe load carrying capacity of a structure. The load rating must be updated when there are any changes affecting load carrying capacity of a structure and if there are any other Federal Highway Administration required loading changes. The district last performed a load rating for the Golden Gate Bridge in 2015. Since 2015, Federal Highway has revised the load rating guidelines to require structures be analyzed for 2 new vehicle loads. In addition, the 2015 load rating did not include the loading from the suicide deterrent system. So due to these changes, the district is required to update the structure load rating and to report the new values to the Federal Highway. It is planned that the load rating analysis will be performed during 2023-24 inspection cycle. District engineering staff have been performing the fracture critical member inspections, special close-up inspection of those bridge members that are accessible from existing bridge access platforms and maintenance travelers, and the routine inspections and complex bridge inspections of those members that can be assessed from a more faraway distance, if necessary with binoculars. In addition to the fracture critical members that are not readily accessible within an arm's length distance, there are a number of areas on the bridge that are not readily accessible to perform the special close-up inspections or complex bridge element inspection and even routine inspections by the engineering staff. So those areas must be inspected by qualified and certified personnel using rope climbing access techniques. These elements that are not accessible by the engineering staff include the south approach viaduct girder span steel diaphragms, the Fort Point arch steel pedestals located on top of the floor beams, the entire suspension bridge stiffening trusses on the side of steel orthotropic deck and steel pedestals located on top of the floor beams, Strat 5 at the south and north towers. And in addition to the part of the inspections required non-destructive testing of the suspension cable I-bar pins. In the past, the district retained a professional engineering consultant firm with personnel certified in the use of rope climbing access techniques to assess and inspect this area. During the previous inspection cycles, engineering staff utilized the existing suspension bridge maintenance travelers to access and inspect the bridge members on this structure. Due to the ongoing construction of the suicide deterrent project, the existing suspension span maintenance travelers are no longer available for the district's use. So for the next two bridge inspection cycles, all suspension bridge inspections must be performed by a consulting firm certified in using rope climbing access techniques. So this is in addition to inspections of the not readily accessible areas on other structures of the bridge. This, and once again, this inspection may require non-destructive testing in addition to investigation of elements, including also structural analysis to define the impact of conditions found during the inspections on load-bearing capacity of the investigated members. It is also proposed that on a trial basis, in addition to the rope inspection method, the consultant hired by the district will utilize an unarmed aircraft system for the routine inspection of the suspension bridge north backspan stiffening trusses to test the reliability of this method, of this inspection method. So the district does not have in-house rope inspection expertise or non-destructive testing expertise or the level of computer modeling capacity to perform the load rating analysis, and must contract with an outside consultant to perform the field inspections of the bridge areas not accessible through conventional methods, and other work that must be accomplished during the next two cycles, 2021-22 and 2023-24 of bridge inspections. The district, in November last year, the district advertised on its website a request for proposal for bridge inspection services. And also, in addition to the ad on the website, reach out to the known professional consultants specializing in inspection of bridges using specialized rigging and rope access techniques. In addition to it, the district held a pre-proposal meeting in November 2020 to answer any questions that interested parties may have, and also to provide advice to those disadvantaged business enterprise firms that were interested in the project. So during these meetings, 11 people representing 5 firms attended the meeting, and 36 firms downloaded documents from the district website. As a result, we only received only one proposal. This proposal was submitted by HDR Engineering of Walnut Creek, California. Representatives from the engineering department and Caltrans Structures Maintenance and Investigations for toll bridges, as well as the district DBE program administrator and district attorney, reviewed the proposal and determined that it was responsive to the solicitation requirements. So in the situation when the district receives only one proposal, it is necessary, in conformance with Section 5, Competitive Negotiations of the District Procurement Manual, that in the event the district receives only one proposal in response to RFP, the selection committee shall conduct a cost analysis to determine whether the compensation proposal is fair and reasonable. Staff requested cost proposal after evaluation of the qualification and determination of qualification of the consultant. Staff requested a cost proposal from HDR Engineering and conducted cost analysis independently of the proposal, and also prepared its own independent cost estimate. After these reviews, staff negotiated a total of not to exceed price for these professional services in the amount of $9,063,000 with HDR Engineering. Staff has determined that this not to exceed price is fair and reasonable based on the scope of work and historic cost data of bridge inspection services provided by consultants on previous bridge inspection contracts. And I concur with both findings related to the qualification and the proposed budget for these services. In addition to it, a small business enterprise contract-specific goal of 2% was established for this RFP. The district DBE program administrator has determined that HDR Engineering has met 2% SDE goal, and is responsive to the district DBE SDE requirements for this contract. At this time, 6% SDE participation is anticipated, and this includes 2.8% DBE participation. So with this, staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend to the Board of Directors an award of this PSA 2020 D53 Bridge Inspection Services to HDR Engineering for a not to exceed price of $9,063,000 and establish an establishment of 10% contingency in the amount of $906,300 for this PSA for any additional scope that may develop while work proceeds. The consultant will be compensated based upon actual time expended and expenses incurred, plus a fixed fee within the authorized not to exceed amount. The cost of the services will be 100% district funded. It is estimated that approximately $1.2 million of the project budget will be expended in this fiscal year, and sufficient funds are available in this fiscal year Bridge Division operating budget to finance this cost. So with this lengthy presentation, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have for me.
Take a deep breath, Ava. Are there any directors who have questions on item 5 for Ms. Valver-Bush?
Director Maston, I have a question.
Director Maston, please.
Yes. Relative to the load rating analysis, does FHWA require it on any kind of a regular cycle, or is it only when there are load changes?
It's when there are condition changes, load changes, or they, for example, change the standards for the vehicles that have to be, the bridges have to be checked for.
Okay, but they don't require it on like a 5 or a 10-year cycle or anything like that?
Well, what's happening while a structure ages, I think as a result of bridge inspections, our procedure is that when we notice certain deterioration, we do our analysis. So it's not the official load rating of the bridge, but in case of deterioration, it may affect the load-bearing capacity of certain elements. So in a way, we need to update our load rating.
Okay, so we sort of do it when we feel we need to, but they don't require it.
They don't require it on any specific timeline. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other directors with questions for Ms. Valver-Bush? Then, Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
And we have a motion then on the item.
So moved.
All right, Director Garbarino, I think that was. And a second? And a second by Director Cochran. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. We're voting on item number 5 with a first from Director Cochran, first from Director Garbarino and a second from Director Cochran. Director Arnold. Absent Director Frederick. Absent Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Aye. Director Grosboll.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Hill.
Yes.
Director Maston.
Yes.
Director. Thank you. Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Aye. Director Rodoni. Absent. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Stephanie. Absent. Second Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
First Vice President Terrio.
Yes.
And President Parr.
Yes, and make sure and take pictures. Those are our favorite pictures after they're done.
Thank you. That motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item number 6 is to authorize execution of the Third Amendment to Contract number 2016 D34, support for Avtech console system with Avtech Incorporated. Staff report begins on page 21, and Deputy General Manager of the Bridge Division, Steve Miller, will present on this item. Mr. Miller, please proceed.
All right, thank you, Chair Therio, members of the committee. Steve Miller, Deputy General Manager, Bridge. So this is an item before you as a staff request that the committee recommend execution of a Third Amendment to our contract with Avtech, Inc., contract number 2016, District 34, for 3 firm years and 2 option years of maintenance and technical support. If you're curious what an Avtech console is, when we went live with our Advanced Communication and Information System, ACIS, in 2016, the console system is sort of the integrator between the radio system and the ancillary systems of the ACIS. So, for example, at bus division, in the dispatch stations, there's 2 Avtech consoles, and that console basically makes the radio system into a touchscreen operable system. So if you imagine, somebody turning frequency dials on a radio to change frequencies or to talk to someone else, this Avtech console actually consolidates all those functions into an easy-to-use touchscreen for the operator. So they're located in the sergeant's office. There's 2 stations here at the bridge. At bus, there's 2 stations in the dispatch area. And there is a EOC designated console at bus division and a test console for testing new software configuration or implementing new changes to the system. So having said that, this is absolutely a mission critical electronic infrastructure for us. So we necessarily have to have the methods and systems in place to maintain it, especially on short notice in the event of issues or problems. So this is a extension of an existing contract for just over $40,000 a year for 3 firm years and 2 option years. That covers, all the software upgrades, firmware updates, remote support, 24/7 emergency assistance. And I suspect that, this will go the full term of 5 years, so for a total of just over $200,000. The good news is that Avtech is a well-regarded vendor with us and has done very well for us in emergencies and that sort of thing. At bus, there's another layer. There's a substantial integration with the Init CAD AVL system because the bus driver actually has a console of their own. It's the Init Touchmon. There was a significant upgrade to that system that completed last year, and Avtech stepped up throughout the process and supported the changes that need to be made on their side and did that under the terms of this agreement. So folks who are responsible for the first line maintenance here are pleased with the responsiveness and service of this vendor. So this cost of this contract is already budgeted in the Bridge Division's operating budget and is 100% district funded. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do any of the directors have questions? Hearing none. Is there anyone from the public, Madam Secretary, who wants to talk about this?
We have no public speakers.
Okay. Then can I have a motion on the item?
So moved.
Second by Rabbit.
And Director Rabbit with the second. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. We're voting on item number 6, starting with Director Arnold. Absent. Director Fredericks. Absent. Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Aye. Director Grosboll.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Aye. Director Hill.
Yes.
Director Maston.
Yes.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Aye. Director Rodoni. Absent. Director Snyder.
Aye.
Aye. Director Stephanie. Absent. Second Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
Yes. First Vice President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. And President Parr.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So next we have item 7, report on bicycle safety study for the Golden Gate Bridge. Staff report's on page 23. And there's an attached consultant report that starts on page 27. Mr. Miller, this is yours again.
Yes, thank you, Chair Therio. So the item before you is an informational report only and requires no action at this time. It is a report out on the work we've been doing in terms of bicycle safety at the bridge. I arrived here in 2017, and one of the first things I do as a manager is sort of query my staff on, what are the things that we need to be focused on, what are the issues and problems that we need to address. And I sort of heard this overarching, resounding chorus that, safety on the sidewalks is an important issue for us. So we've been looking at it since. The conditions constantly evolve. As we all know, bicycle usage has been rising dramatically. And then, as early as 2018, the electric bikes arrived on the scene in a big way with the jump bikes that landed in the Presidio. And so, as we work through our sort of look at bicycle safety on the sidewalks, we decided that, let's step back. We now have electric bikes to think about, pedestrian safety. Let's step back and take a broad global look at the conditions out there and what's going on, and get some solid recommendations to move forward with. So we enlisted the services of Alta Planning and Design during 2019 to take a look at our data, take a look at our conditions, and give us some feedback on what we should be doing. Alta is a well-regarded, well-known firm in the bicycle transportation space, so I think we landed well with a good consultant, and I'm happy with the product of their work. So that's what you have before you. As we all know, the bridge has become more and more crowded over the years. A lot of effort has gone into bicycle and pedestrian safety, and it certainly predates me. Over the years, the sidewalks were expanded with the road deck. Back in the 80s, the safety railing was completed in the early 2000s. There's been a lot of effort at improved signage, pavement markings, traffic control. For example, if you look at it, the sort of Byzantine regulations on who uses what sidewalk when, that's basically represents a fine balance between safety and maximum utilization of the sidewalks for bicycles in terms of commute and recreation. So it's an ongoing effort, and I view this as just another step forward and our opportunity to look at sort of the new technology that's out there and integrate our policy in terms of electric bicycles. So I know you have a busy agenda today. I won't take too much time, but I did want to walk through some of the key findings and highlight some of the recommendations we'll be looking at, and then talk about the process we envision going forward. So before I do that, I would like to recognize our consultant for, I think, doing a really bang-up job for us. We supplied a lot of data, but they really did a great job in terms of their insightful analysis and really taking a really keen approach and coming up with some great insights and recommendations. I also want to recognize the Bridge Patrol, Bridge Security Department, Roadway Services. These are the folks who are out there on a day-to-day basis, tirelessly trying to keep everybody safe and responding to incidents that are sometimes severe in nature, and they do that, selflessly and often heroically. So they certainly deserve a great deal of recognition, because things could certainly be a lot worse without their efforts. So if you take a look at the study, I'll just highlight some of the things I think are important that we should be talking about during our discussions. If you'd like to follow along, I'd direct your attention first to page 5 of the study. What you'll see there is a tabular sort of representation of what we think the usage is. This is based on a 2015 bike and pedestrian traffic survey. And so this was conducted over a period of 4 days during the peak tourist season in early September. We wanted to update this as part of this effort, but as you well know, as we got into 2020, the busy season never materialized. We didn't have a tourist season in 2020, so it was impossible to redo the bike and ped study, or survey. I think if we had, I think everybody sort of agrees that we would see even more usage, even more dramatic numbers. But even as early as 2015, the numbers are pretty dramatic. If you look at the top row of the top table there, during a busy weekday at midday, as many as close to 700 pedestrians and over 400 bicycles entered the sidewalk during the same hour. So it gives you an idea of the conditions out there, and we all know from our own observation how crowded the sidewalks can get. If you look at, and we do our best in terms of the sidewalk hours to keep bicyclists using unfettered access to the west sidewalk, but at the same time we have to balance that with the needs of our maintenance forces and our contractors. Right now with the SDS construction to access the west sidewalk to get to the work that needs to be continue on the bridge. So we have a peak here in 2015 of 8,147 pedestrians on a busy Saturday using the sidewalk. The reason it's a 16-hour total is the sidewalk is closed to pedestrians during hours of darkness. It's only open to bicycles. And when we look at the west sidewalk, the numbers aren't quite as dramatic, but the west sidewalk is heavily used. If you look at that top row for the west sidewalk, the peak evening commute, 229 bicyclists in 1 hour. That's quite a bit of traffic for basically a 10-foot wide pathway. Saturdays and Sundays are the busiest times, obviously, and we see as many, at least at that time, we saw as many as 5,753 bicyclists using the west sidewalk during a period of daylight hours. Really want to do a follow-up because everybody suspects that those numbers are much higher now, 2018, 2019, but we'll revisit that when the tourists return, hopefully as the pandemic eases over the next year or two. So if you turn to page 6 and 7, it gives you sort of a visual representation, the trends throughout the day. When are the busy times, when are the less busy times. It's what's clear from the analysis, and Alta and the staff there did a really good job of breaking this down and looking at peaks and trends, and that it's just clear that it's a heavily used resource, and so how do we manage it effectively and responsibly and safely. So if you go ahead and turn to, we'll take a look at our speed survey. If you turn to page 9, so we looked at sidewalk usage, and then we were interested in how fast are folks really going out there. You hear things anecdotally. If you notice, there are radar speed signs for the bicyclists. There were 4, one at each end of the north and south ends of the east and west sidewalks, and during 2019 we added 2 at midspan. So bicyclists can get feedback at midspan, and we can also collect data because that's where the speed data came from. These speed signs actually record the observations. So when you look at these tables of the speed data, that's based on a period in June and July of 2019 and represents in the neighborhood of 36,000 individual speed observations. The data isn't perfect, but with the sample size, we think it's pretty good. So, what we learned was that, average speeds on the west sidewalk are about 20 miles an hour. And that's not surprising. The average speeds, if you look at page 10 on the east sidewalk, the average speeds are 17 miles an hour. One thing to keep in mind when you look at these, the signs are set to not record any speeds below 8 miles an hour because then it would be picking up pedestrians and joggers and that sort of thing. So we actually think that the actual calculated averages are probably just a bit lower than this. One thing to point out there is, the 85th percentile speed. For those of you who are involved in traffic engineering, that's an important concept when we talk about setting speed limits. And, it's a generally accepted notion that 85% of the people will drive a safe speed on any given highway or roadway. So on the east sidewalk, your 85th percentile speed was 13 miles per hour, and on the west sidewalk, the 85th percentile speed was 20 miles an hour. So continuing on to, if you take a look at page 12, this gives you histogram and a pie chart that talks about collisions. So the next step in our analysis was, we looked at usage trends, we looked at speeds, and then we did a really in-depth, thorough analysis of the bicycle accident or incident data for the period of 2010, January through December 31st, 2019. So 10 years of accident data. One thing to keep in mind when you look at this data, the only accident records that we keep are when Bridge Patrol is actually notified of a bicycle incident or accident and responds and renders aid of some sort, and then that's the trigger to generate a bicycle accident report. So there are lots of bumps and bruises and mishaps out there that go unreported because we either don't know about them or they're not significant enough to trigger an accident report. So these are kind of the more serious ones, I guess is a good way to characterize it. So if you look at the histogram at the top of page 12, it's not surprising that the busier times of the day are going to result in more collisions. There's also, some suspicion or, some indication that, the more congested, the more likely mishaps and collisions occur. When we looked at speed, often when the officers on scene take a accident report, there's often no witnesses, and when there are, sometimes they don't mention speed, but if speed was cited as a factor, either a witness said they were going way too fast or the person who crashed said I was going too fast, they did record that data. So you see that speed was cited as a factor in 21% of the collisions. Speed not a factor in 2% and unknown is 77% because there were no witnesses or no statements were made regarding speed. But if you flip to page 13, it is clear that there is a correlation. If speed was cited as a factor in the accident or incident, that it was more likely that a person was going to be transported by ambulance from the scene. So, two things happen. Either a person has, no injuries or is injured, treated at the scene and released or transported by ambulance. It was much more likely that a person would be transported by accident in cases where speed was cited as a factor in the collision. It is a truism here, an axiomatic truism, that you are much more likely to leave the bridge sidewalks by ambulance than you are from the roadway, particularly since the installation of the movable medium barrier and the advances in automobile technology with the airbags and crumple zones and all the safety advances. We rarely see serious injuries anymore on the bridge due to vehicle collisions, but bicycles are a very different story. Bicycles don't have airbags, don't have crumple zones, and often some of the injuries can be pretty severe. So if you go on to page 14, we established that, speeds are higher on the west sidewalk, and it's, statistically significant that bicycle accidents on the west side are more likely to result in transport by ambulance for off-site medical care, which sort of indicates that there is correlation between speed and severity of accidents. So if we go on to page 15, the consultant did a really good job of, when the officer taking the report details the circumstances, they index the location by light pole, so the consultant had some really good data to work with in terms of where did these incidents and accidents occurred. So over the course of the 10 years, there was 241 accidents that resulted in an accident report involving bicycles on the bridge. So if you look at the graphic on page 15, that gives you sort of a histogram legend of where they occurred. It's not surprising that if you see those spikes on the east and west side, those spiky areas, those are correspond to the narrow sections of the sidewalk near the pylons where the sidewalk reduces to as narrow as 5.5 feet. And then some trend around the towers, especially the Marin Tower on the west sidewalk where the sight lines are limited and there's more opportunity for conflicts. If you turn to page 16, the photograph at the top right, figure 16, it's not hard to imagine that this location is the point of the most collisions during the 10-year period. There were 10 collisions associated with this location here. So one thing that does for us is it gives us some areas to focus on and to, sort of direct extra attention in terms of our efforts here to improve signage, improve delineation of space, and all those things. So if you go down to the graphic at the bottom of page 16, that characterizes the type of incidents. So the most common is solo bike, and then followed by bike and pedestrian, solo bike followed by bike versus bike, then bike versus pedestrian, and other. There was only a couple of others, and those were kind of strange ones where bicycles collided with vehicles that weren't moving and that sort of thing. So it's not surprising that the west side leads in bike versus bike, and the east side leads in bike versus pedestrian. As part of this study, I personally reviewed each one of the incident reports that were data points for this, and a really typical bike versus pedestrian is someone's taken a photograph, the bicyclist passed them by, and the person suddenly backs up to get a better, more scenery in his viewfinder, that sort of thing. Children tend to dart around and will dart out in front of bicyclists on the east sidewalk, that sort of thing, very common. Many of the solo bike accidents are characterized as solo because there was only one bike that crashed, but often if you read the narrative associated with the report, that solo crash was because they were trying to avoid either a pedestrian or another bicyclist. So these are sort of pure numbers. If two bikes actually collided, they become bike versus bike, but if a person crashes trying to avoid another bike, then that's wound up in the solo column. And I know that's a lot of information. Please jump in if there's any questions as we go along. So we'll move now. I think those are some of the key takeaways from the survey. That'll give us something to base our recommendations on. The consultant had a slate of recommendations that are very specific and I think well targeted. However, as we move forward with the process, we're going to reach out publicly and conduct some public outreach in the form of workshops and that, and potentially request a formal hearing with the board. We already have reached out extensively to the bicycle community. However, we met with the SF Chamber of Commerce regarding electric bikes back in 2019, September. We've met with Marin Bike Coalition multiple times and met in a very sort of formal way in September and October of 2020. SF Bike Coalition in October of 2020. We met with vendors of electric bikes as early as 2018 to talk about, how do we integrate that technology into our policy and do that in a safe way that still recognizes, the need to provide the utility of the resource or the resource. So I'll talk briefly about the safety recommendations. They start on page 17. So, number one, establish a bicycle speed limit. A lot has changed as we've embarked on our effort here to study formally the bike safety. County of Marin has acted formally in terms of Marin County Parks and Open Space in terms of speed limits and electric bikes. The National Park Service has enacted regulations regarding electric bikes, and they've had speed limits for quite some time. Other jurisdictions, City of Tiburon, as Alice would know, made changes and adopted policy around electric bikes. I think what's important in terms of the speed limit is in our discussions with our consultant, our internal discussion with the bike community, we don't want to just arbitrarily hang a speed limit sign that's, not enforceable. So hence, I think, it's prudent for us to obey sort of established principles in terms of establishing a speed limit. And, number one, we want to be consistent. The Golden Gate Bridge sidewalks are considered part of the coastal trail system. And at the north and south ends of the bridge, the speed limits are generally 15 miles an hour on the mixed-use trails and pathways. So, consistency is important, and also recognizing the fact that, folks use the bridge sidewalks for commute. So we don't want to, set arbitrarily low speed limits. So that's why it was important to look at in our speed survey, the 85th percentiles, because the, general principle in establishing a speed limit is you should stay true to that. So we had an 85th percentile of 20 miles per hour on the west side, an 85th percentile of 17 on the east sidewalk. So you basically, the generally accepted notion is you round to the nearest 5 miles an hour. So that puts the east sidewalk squarely at 15. And the west sidewalk needs to be 15 based on, sort of conditions that are, not generally noticeable to the operator, meaning fog, construction equipment, limited sight lines, the potential of a pedestrian popping out, and that sort of thing. So sort of the general methodology allows the traffic engineer to vary from the 85th percentile by as much as 5 miles an hour. And still sort of be, legitimately setting a reasonable speed limit. So in all those, having, talked through all that, having all those discussions, 15 miles an hour seems to be the most sensible, most reasonable. Talking with the bicycle community, they feel that 15 miles an hour is reasonable to allow people to travel across the bridge without, unnecessarily being slowed down in their commute. The consultant also recommended in the limited sight visibility areas around the towers to drop it down to 5 miles an hour. In the past, we've had advisory signs, requesting that bicycles walk the bikes around the towers. We think that's, sort of unrealistic, and most folks aren't going to readily, abide by that or go along with it. So posted 5 mile an hour speed limit around the towers is the recommendation as it currently stands. And the speed limits become important in the context of the electric bikes as well. State of California type classified electric bikes in 2015 with Assembly Bill 1096, which type classified them into 3 types, 1, 2, and 3, with types 1 and 2 having a maximum assisted speed of 20 miles an hour. A type 3 bicycle has a maximum assisted speed of 28 miles an hour. So as we look at that, by statute, a type 1 and 2 are generally allowed anywhere a normal bicycle is allowed without restriction, trails, paths, anywhere you can ride a regular bike, those are allowed. Type 3s are generally restricted from mixed-use pathways, or what's known as a Class 1 bikeway, which is what the bridge sidewalks are most similar to. So in most cases, a Type 3 electric bike would be restricted by statute from the bridge sidewalks. However, that presents some real problems for us in terms of enforcement. For one, bicycles are hard to distinguish. So how do you tell the difference? Is that a Type 3 or Type 2? But even more importantly, we know that the crowd that commutes, many prefer a Type 3 bike for obvious reasons. The district now owns 4 electric bicycles that our bridge sergeants and patrol officers use to patrol the bridge sidewalks. Those are type 3s to give them the extended range and the responsiveness and speed to respond quickly. So having had those, that philosophical discussion about type 3 bicycles, we decided that we should be agnostic to the bicycle type and control the safety through the speed limit. So we're happy to, in my mind, I'd be happy to allow the type 3s just as long as they obey the reasonable speed limit. So that sort of makes it cleaner and more straightforward from an enforcement perspective, and it also, allows maximum utility for those who choose to commute or use for recreation electric bikes. I'm certainly a big fan of them. It certainly opened the door and reduced barriers to bicycling for a lot of folks, especially folks with physical limitations and things of that nature. So I think, and it obviously, one of our core goals as an organization is to, promote alternatives to vehicular travel, lower vehicle miles traveled, and bicycling, commuting by bicycle, recreation by bicycle is a great way to do that. So I think, we should take every step we can to promote their use and not unduly restrict it. So continuing, just quickly, recommendations, continued signage and pavement markings, delineating space. If you go out on the bridge, you'll see there's quite a bit now, but there's some improvements we can make, and there's some things that we can do creatively out there to try and separate the peds and the bikes and make things a little safer. So there's some specific recommendations there that we'll go forward with. If you look at page 19, you'll see pavement markings. Some of these already exist out there, but there's some improvements we can make, and we need to take a fresh look and refresh all of that. I talked about recommendation number 4, electric bicycles. The consultant, we all agree that we should be agnostic in terms of electric bike type and just, use the speed limit as a reasonable way to keep everybody safe. Just for a little history, the district's master ordinance contemplates mopeds and motorized bicycles, but not electric bicycles. That language was adopted long before electric bicycles were on the scene or popular. So part of the recommendation package that we'll eventually bring forward will be some modification to the master ordinance in terms of electric bicycles. And that could be as simple as broadening our definition of a bicycle to include, type 1, 2, 3 electric bikes. So there'll be a recommendation regarding that. And then recommendation number 5, the bridge currently prohibits other mobility devices such as, skateboards, scooters, things of that nature. If somebody wants to bring a scooter, if they push it under people power, we allow that, but nothing motorized. The consultant recommends that we continue that prohibition. I think that, should any of these other alternative mobility devices become, more mainstream in terms of commuter transportation, then, we revisit and take a look at those and decide at that time. This time, the sidewalks are just too congested, too much going on out there to have these other modes mixing in with that. So in terms of next steps, as I said, we'll be working with our consultant, Alta, to pull together some public outreach in terms of workshops. We may do a virtual open house if it's not cost prohibitive. And our goal is to shop these recommendations and these findings out to the bicycling community. I've learned in my career that the folks who are best at refining process are the folks who are actively engaged in it, and we've already gotten some really great feedback and recommendations from the bike community, and hopefully we'll get more with the goal of, sort of refining the recommendations based on what we learned through that process, and then come back to you with a more refined slate of recommendations for future action. So with that, I'll go ahead and asked if there's any questions regarding this. And I apologize, it was a lot to lay on you in this short time.
That's okay. Any questions from the directors for Mr. Miller?
Director Maston, I've got a couple questions.
Please go ahead, Director Maston.
Yeah. Do we have detailed maps available that show things such as light pole 26 and other places on the bridge?
Director Maston, yeah, we do have light pole references, and happy to share what we do have with you.
Well, I was wondering if there were, other things besides light poles that are referenced, from time to time that, could be easily identifiable on a map.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most of the stuff that we have are more engineering type drawings that aren't really intuitive for, a person who is a bicyclist using the bridge. But I think, based on your question, I think it would probably be prudent for us to develop something.
Okay, we'll work with our marketing team. Yeah, we'll work with our marketing team to come up with a graphic that does exactly what you suggested, Director.
Yeah.
Okay. The graph in the study was helpful, but still left a lot to chance. The other question I have is it possible to get a copy of the Altis study that's not embedded in the agenda? I wanted to save it, but couldn't, except for cutting and pasting the whole thing, I wasn't able to get that.
Yeah, I'm sure if Amaret doesn't have a clean copy of it, I'll get it over to her and she can distribute that.
We have one. We can extract it, but we don't need to do that because we do have a separate version of it. This was just to make it easy so that you could follow along in the whole packet, so I'll send it separately.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do any of the other directors have questions for Mr. Miller?
Director Rabbit, perhaps less a question, more of an observation. Especially on the graphics part. I really, I know that those of us who serve on SMART, for instance, and inattention, and I'm not sure if any of the data shows inattention as any of the issues with any of the bicycle pedestrian accidents, earbuds on bicyclists or anything like that. But graphics matter. I think we have an opportunity at the bridge, just like with everything that we do, to kind of have a really cohesive graphics package. You have tourists that are here for the views to take in the splendor of the bridge. They should be taking in the splendor of the graphics that are unique to the bridge and call their attention to it. And hopefully between pedestrians visiting and bicyclists that we could really make an impact by having the right graphics in the right locations, in the right styles that are not just the kind of standard fare, things that you would see anywhere USA. So that's my comment. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rabbit. Did you want to respond at all, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I'll shop that back to our consultant, and we'll include that in the workshops in terms of the, what do people feel would be effective graphics. The problem with the signage is it ends up, becoming sign pollution out there, and the more signs, it seems the less people tend to read them or pay attention to them. So, it's sort of a balancing act. But in terms of, improved graphics, I think that's best, especially the fact that, we get tourists from all around the world, and printed, script signs aren't all that effective. So, yeah, that's a great suggestion, sir. Thank you.
I realize it's a delicate balance, but it's just an offer, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Miller, I was going to have a suggestion that I'll actually I'll save it for an email later about signage on that narrow passage on the north end of the west sidewalk where it gets down to 5.5 feet. But rather than take up time, I'll move along and ask if any other directors have questions.
This is Bert. I have a question.
Please go ahead, Director Hill.
Okay. I took a very close look at the report. And first of all, I want to thank the management of the Bridge District for recognition of the importance of active transportation as part of climate change in taking this so seriously. And it was very much appreciated. An observation I had that I did not include in my report. Now, I did send a report or observations to General Manager Mulligan and on Tuesday, and I'm going to read and talk about that. But first of all, I want to say that I did a little bit of research since then, and a very important factor to consider is that demand has exploded for scooters and bicycles, not only in the Bay Area, but across the whole nation. A friend of mine yesterday called me because he had gone down to Mike's Bikes to buy a bicycle, and they said there is a 3-month wait. You can only order them. They're just showrooms not right now. So we have now thousands of new bicycles actually coming into the Bay Area in this last year, as well as scooters and every other kind of conveyance. So I think I realized we used 2015 because that was what was available. But I think before we make any huge changes, we really need to do another survey this year at a time that we consider that we're approaching a new normal, because we may find that a lot of the statistics are much different, particularly within the range of non-recreational or utility riders in this particular case. So with that, I'm going to so I'm going to kind of cover it in summary my observations. First of all, in public outreach, I'd suggest you make use of the local bicycle and pedestrian advisory committees in the adjoining counties somewhere in the process. For example, San Francisco BAC members represent the Board of Supervisors' 11 districts. So there's one for each district by appointment, helping to ensure diversity and equity, which is an important consideration in here. And I would say that BAC is incredibly diverse. In every dimension you can imagine. You should see a picture. BAC members have experience in bicycle-related planning. There are a number of issues and rules, particularly with county transportation authorities, that require a review and a recommendation by resolution from the BAC. I'm not sure if that's universal across the state. It's certainly the case in San Francisco. They're familiar with local and state regulations and activism in promoting public discourse and active transportation issues. They also work with bicycle advocacy organizations in providing a needed government endorsement. I just mentioned that. The study evaluated 2015 data without identifying the bicycle population. But this is the change that I mentioned before. 3, these new conveyances will likely be disproportionately electrically powered and, as noted, capable of 20+ miles per hour. Speed is going to be a problem. The plan to use dynamic speed indicators, the speed limit, is well placed, but I think we should consider a congestion management approach where the posted speed limit varies by the amount of congestion, pedestrian and other bicycles, and other active transportation devices. Perhaps even considering if it grows as an indication with the sales of these things of holding people from entering the bridge if it becomes too dense to move somewhat efficiently. For safety, you might want to have this dynamic congestion where the speed limit is not a set 15 miles an hour or something like that, but in fact could vary between 10 miles an hour and 20 miles an hour. I know I've ridden across the bridge late at night, and there's virtually nobody. So there's no reason to actually restrict down to 15 mile an hour, I would say, in that context. But having it dynamic makes it a little bit easier to show proportions and the appropriate speed for the time and the amount of congestion. Also, it might be helpful on your indicator with showing speed that you actually, if you can, I think you can because I've seen in other places, have it actually turn to red when someone's going a little bit over that speed limit to really get the idea across that they're not supposed to be riding at that speed. It's just a suggestion. There seems to be, it appeared to me, but a subsequent letter from Dennis clarified that that's not the case, that there's an arbitrary decision to exclude the later parts of active transportation, namely scooters, as a major source of mobility in 2021. If you're in the streets of San Francisco and other places that are extremely important anecdotally, my grandchildren and my daughter-in-law uses scooters for almost all their trips. They're not in an automobile, and so I think we would be wrong to just say excluding scooters. Now that doesn't mean that it's not important to make sure that they are safe and we don't have injuries. The injury statistics on scooters, I would comment, are based on the fact, I suspect they're based on the fact that scooters have small wheels. And if they're ridden on regular streets and regular areas with any kind of rails or anything else, the small wheels tend to get caught. And I think a lot of the injuries are tied to that. The pathways on the bridge are pretty clean and flat. So I don't think we're going to have any of that kind of problem. I would suggest that we do a study where we evaluate the causes and backup areas of that. Families, funny, I'm defending scooters, but they certainly are a non-emission form, and they have the convenience of being able to fold very easily and go in the back of a car, or you can even put them on your backpack if they're not electronic. But we should look forward to that and suggesting determining which devices are unsafe for use on the bridge. We should actually define it on what it looks like and the components that make it possibly dangerous. For example, we should clearly exclude skateboards because they have a real possibility of the board leaving the path and landing in a vehicle lane or the suicide area. So there's no question about that kind of a unit. Somewhat the same with roller skates. Except that in a crowded environment, it can be very dangerous for everybody. So I would agree. So what I would suggest is defining it around the construction of the device as it is. For instance, having a requirement for handlebars and wheels of a certain minimum diameter, rather than just saying this whole class has to go. There should be a large diagram signage posted at each entry point that clearly shows the types of devices which are approved and which are prohibited. Restrictions should include device widths. These rules should be posted prominently on our website also, so when people arrive, there is a chart that says these are approved, these are not approved, and a little bit of why in the spec, so that there isn't confusion, from tourists and citizens also. We may need to consider some kind of an enforcement strategy. If we've got a lot of people endangering others, we should find a way with cameras or otherwise to actually do it if the growth is it somewhat appears it might be, based on the amount of sales and use of these particular things. Just one thing that's minor, also referred to accidents. In the safety world, ocean and others, we don't use the word accidents, we use incidents. That's a technicality, but it's good to use that terminology. And the other suggestion I make is be a good time to redefine the word sidewalk into the proper transportation term of a multi-use pathway or a bike only or a class designated as a class type of 4 or 1. So that summarizes my observations with it. And I want to say I hope this does not at all reflect any feeling that the bridge didn't do an absolutely superb job of doing a careful analysis and seeing all the factors. But with that, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Director Hill. They're greatly appreciated by staff, and we'll reflect upon those as we go forward. I will give a quick couple of thoughts on a few of them. To start with, the genesis of this study is a desire to enhance safety on the bridge sidewalks and also to meet the board's objectives as detailed in your climate emergency declaration that you passed in October of 2019. With respect to that, electric scooters failed the first objective. All the available published data for electric scooters clearly indicates very high rates of injuries and hospitalizations associated with electric scooters, with some public data indicating that as many as half of all injuries involve the head. If our goal is to enhance safety at this juncture, if there's a new mobility device that has a safety record, published record by government agencies that shows high rates of instances, I think it's premature to welcome them to our sidewalks since we already have high accident issues on our sidewalks. And I would recommend that we revisit the issue periodically with all these new mobility devices and to periodically review the available published safety information on them to see what accident rates are, and then to come back to the board at periodic junctures to talk about them. But at this juncture, staff strongly recommends against allowing electric scooters on the Golden Gate Bridge sidewalks based on the published accident data that shows excessively high accident rates for those mobility devices. With respect to congestion on the sidewalks, when there is congestion on the sidewalks, it's not when we have our most serious accidents on the Golden Gate Bridge sidewalks. The most serious accidents all involve speed. The most serious accidents have all occurred on the west sidewalk. And the most serious accidents commonly occur when there's very few people out there. So there has not been on our bridge sidewalks for the last 10 years a correlation between congestion and accidents. There's been no tourist bikes or no tourists on the east sidewalk during the last year, but we still have bike accidents occurring on the Golden Gate Bridge. So the fact that there are no tourists on the sidewalks for last year, and while we still see people leaving the sidewalks in ambulances, indicates that the congestion is not the cause of those, but the cause of the need of an ambulance is typically does involve speed. With respect to dynamic speed limits, that would not be enforceable under state law. What we're contemplating ultimately doing is perhaps coming back to the board based on what we hear from the public with a recommendation like the multi-use paths on both sides of the bridge in other jurisdictions to have a speed limit that is enforceable. State law does not allow for dynamic speed limits. Also, from a practical perspective for our patrol officers on the sidewalk, having something that's easily communicated, easily understood by users is a better way to achieve compliance. So recognizing that the ease of communication, recognizing state law doesn't allow enforcement, and recognizing that congestion is not correlated to severe accidents on our sidewalks, I think it's just my quick takeaway is that perhaps a dynamic speed limit may not be appropriate, but we'll see what we hear from other members of the public, and we can do further research to see if perhaps state law has changed. And clearly, with respect to outreach, Director Hill, we will gladly go to the committee that you chair for the City and County of San Francisco and any other groups that you may suggest to us that you feel would provide a good forum for us to reach as broad a cross-section of the community as we can. So if you have other suggestions, please follow up with those on those also. But that's kind of just a couple quick thoughts. Steve, do you have anything else to add on that one?
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback. And for Director Hill, yeah, we're happy to engage with the BPACs, and I think that's a great suggestion. So I'll work with our PIO, Paulo, and reach out to those folks, and glad to go present to them or engage with them in any way they feel is good and appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I just want to mention one more thing. Vision Zero is working diligently with legislators to eliminate the 85th percentile because studies have shown that groups of drivers are not good judges of the safe speed limit. So that I think we're going to see within the next couple of years the elimination of the 85th percentile as a prediction. But it's definitely a clear part of the Vision Zero philosophy to remove it.
Thank you, Director Hill. Do any other directors have questions or comments on this report? Okay, this is not an action item. Madam Secretary, do we have anybody from the public who wants to talk about this?
We're going to do a really quick poll since we went on for a little bit, so we're going to check in with the public to see if anyone wanted to speak on this item as well as 8, 9, or 10. Okay, hang on one second.
Thank you.
We have no speakers for this item or 8, 9, or 10.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So then let's move along to the next item, item 8. Status report from board appointees on the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Board. There's a link to the SMART website on page 49 of the packet. President Parr, Director Garbarino, which of you wants to go ahead with this?
Director Garbarino will do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Garbarino, please.
Thank you both. Yes, I'm reporting on our SMART board meetings for February 3rd and 17, the lion's share of which in both meetings was the review of the 2020 activities and 2021 goals and challenges. And in both, we had a wonderful both presentation, essentially broken down into 5 parts. The real estate department gave their presentation about the 81 miles of SMART track and 12 stations that it operates. The operations department included a presentation on the transportation division and the vehicle maintenance division. The training program with all the COVID challenges was a fabulous presentation as well, in addition to the train control systems and the public safety department presentation. In addition to that, I'd like to mention, and maybe also have Dennis help me, together with Marin Transit and the Golden Gate Bridge District SMART, started yesterday with a soft start on Sunday, transporting at no cost those individuals who are going to have vaccinations to the vaccination sites in both directions. This is aimed at reducing, of course, any additional transportation on the roads and the cost barriers for community members to get their vaccinations. They're expected to be providing 200 vaccines and eventually get up to 2,000. I do not have COVID. I've had a vaccination and I have a little cough since. And there will also be shuttles. Marin Transit is offering shuttles from the terminus of the SMART stop in Larkspur to the ferry terminal for those who have mobility issues. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Dennis, did you want to add to my report? Oh, let me just mention, my assistant was vaccinated yesterday, and she wanted me to be sure to comment at the ferry terminal that the staff and the volunteers were absolutely wonderful, and it was very well organized. Dennis, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'll talk more tomorrow into the GM report. Other than that, yeah, we're real pleased that Marin Transit, SMART, and Golden Gate are offering free rides on transit the day you get a vaccine. You just got to show your receipt that you have an appointment, and you can ride free all day. We just want to remove a barrier for those that in the community may not have the means to get to the vaccine sites. The vaccines are free, but they need to get there. So we're just really proud that we're all able to come together and make that happen. And yeah, we'll talk more tomorrow about the whole vaccination site and all the good work happening there.
Thank you, and thank you, Director Garbarino. Thank you, General Manager Mulligan. President Parr, did you have anything you wanted to add to the report?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
And Director Rabbit, you'll want to add things sometimes. Did you want to add anything this time?
No, we're good. There was good presentations, timely, going through the departments, and I appreciate the update. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any of the board members have a comment or question on the report? Then that's it for item number 8. Item number 9. We've already polled for public comment, so I'm assuming there is no one still, Madam Secretary. And so we'll move on to item 9, which is the status report on engineering projects, which begins on page 51. Ms. Bauer-Furbush, we're back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My written report is before the committee, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Are there any questions for Ms. Bauer-Furbush? Hearing none, and again, assuming there's no one from the public yet, then this is the longest Building and Operating Committee meeting I think I've chaired. But can we have please have a motion to adjourn it?
Also move. Second, Rabbit.
And a second. And a second from Rabbit, Director Rabbit. If there's no objections, that would be that for this. This concludes the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee. Thank you, colleagues. The time is 11:04 a.m. Thank you.